April Marie here, filling in for Leland. AJ, keeping me out of trouble. Sometimes it's easier than other times. I've been on pretty good behavior, if I do say so myself today, with the exception of us running in right at the end of the play-in of our first segment, and then there's like for those you can't see it, it's off camera, but there is a plug over here, and I didn't realize that for whatever reason my charger wasn't working, and so I did half of that first hour with no device. I was like trying to work off of my phone, which is really problematic because what I do is I have 500 tabs open.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's a method that other hosts, as a matter of fact, I know Valerie's a lot more organized than that. But I'm just sitting over 500 tabs open. And when I can't open my browser to have those 500 tabs, comedy ensues. There are certain subjects I could just rail about for any given number of time. Antifa is one of them. I'm a big fan of this Antifa sentence. By the way, if you can't tell, I'm over here, ha ha, ha ha. Also, I can imagine you go to jail, and every jail's got their own little gangs in there. For whatever it's worth, I don't know that some of these Antifa people are going to do well in jail. I think that they're big man on campus in their own little groups there, but in the real world, not so much, not so much. So that is what it is. All right, let's see going over today's headlines. I'm looking up. Trump did have a lot to say, very varied topics on his Mack truck factory term. By the way, I'm loving Trump's embrace, and I started talking about this with a friend yesterday. Trump's embrace of all things a little country. We had dirt bikes on the at the event at the White House before the fight. There was motorcycles and dirt bikes going on. We had, of course, the fight night itself. I feel like a trip to the Mack truck factory got a little bit of appealing to the country and us all. So enjoying that. Looking at the Senate and what they are doing at the Senate has voted. Now, this is, excuse me, this is not a binding thing, but the Senate has voted to limit Trump's Iran war powers in a rare rebuke. That is breaking this afternoon, so I will get more information of that as the show continues. It's been really interesting to kind of follow along with congressional response to everything in Iran. I mean, it really has been interesting to watch who's come out and who stood with the president, who stood against him. This is Congress agrees today. The Senate adopted and the House passed the Iran War Powers Resolution. The Senate passed it 50-48. It's symbolic only, but in a rebuke of President Donald Trump, not a lot of coverage out there on that, but I will get into that a little later on in the show. Earlier started the show talking about, and this is over on 1819 News. I watched the clip again. I'm not even going to send it to you, AJ, but there's a clip I mentioned yesterday. Those two congressional races are going on down there in South Alabama. They've got an August special election. We've got special elections happening here in District 6 and 7, which is Sewell and Gary Palmer, but those are not competitive races. The incumbents, they're looking pretty good. Sewell is going to be in trouble. And mark my words, I don't know if it's going to happen in 2028 or 2030. I'm going to be kind of peeved if it doesn't happen, and everybody, lawsuits. That's what the left does now. The left sues. When they can't win, they sue. Then they get activist judges who side with them, knowing they're not on the right side of the law, and then things end up having to be appealed. This is the new MO of the left. We have to get used to it. We can't whine. So much of what I deal with on campus is people. There is a scared factor of, if we fire this person, they're going to sue us. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Even if you fire someone with cause, they were saying horrific things. They are saying racist things. They're saying whatever things. And what that does to a university, to specifically, just because I cover those, when you have someone saying is the vile things that we saw after Charlie Kirk's death, the celebration of that. And then now they're saying, oh, I have a First Amendment right to say that. You do. You can go out there and you can say anything you want. But if what you say reflects an intolerance or a hatred, an inability to do your job, if you're a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, or whatever, yeah, you should absolutely expect there to be consequences. Because there's no circumstances, even if someone is on the right, they're conservative. When our extremists speak out and they say something stupid, when you get the groypers out there, we as who are, lumped in with them on the right, which by the way, the far right isn't far right, they're just I almost said something. I almost made you use that dump button, AJ. They're just bat crud crazy. Um, we have to condemn that. And when you have an employer, whether it be a hospital or a school or whatever, and you have shown a level of hatred towards a particular group, we saw this a lot after the attacks and terrorist assaults in Israel. People coming out and celebrating that, like that's not a political thing. That's a you are a bad human being. You are an idiot human being, and you need to suffer the consequences of that belief until you can figure out how to be a normal, sane human being. Oh, nothing drives me crazy more than the leftists who are like, yeah, I wish everybody on the right dies, or yeah, which is basically what they're saying. Oh, Trump supporters, oh, they shouldn't live, or we live in a time where Trump has literally had assassination attempts, multiple assassination attempts. And we live in a time where elected officials have been killed, where Charlie Kirk was killed. We have to take every single one of those threats seriously. And I don't know what it is that the so many leftists have shown an utter disdain, I- but they have, and they are, and it should impact where you work. If where you work is somewhere where it's expected that you're going to not hate people, you're not going to be hate filled or violent. Okay, watching what's happening in DC. We'll come back to that a little later when we get a little bit more information about what they have done there in the Senate. We do continue to celebrate. I am continuing to celebrate. I said it to AJ earlier during the commercial break. I'm excited about these Antifa verdicts. I'm excited that a judge has put them on notice, because it's not a matter of if they're going to rally again like they did during the anti-ICE stuff, but it's when. And I absolutely hate to see it where we are in a position in time where it's like, okay, well, we know they're going to come back, whether it's going to be, deportations start up again or whatever the next thing is. We know they'll be back, and now they're on notice that you're not going to be able to get away with this. Of course, they shot at and struck a law enforcement officer, but no more, no more of this Antifa nonsense. All right, I'm going to take a quick break here. When I come back, while I'm in the commercial break, I'll get into what the Senate did and come back with more information. You guys hold tight. It's April Marie filling in for Leland. Well, good afternoon. Do you see me over here typing? Yeah, that's what's happening. Right as we play in, I'm over here. I I was mentioned before, so device time, and actually there's a Senate bill. I'm going to talk some a congressional bill. I want to talk about a little later in terms of this, or along the same routes. But everything in my house is locked down, so my son has to ask me to come physically let him into his computer. So I was letting the sitter know the code so that she can log him in for a little supervised computer time. Uh, okay, so I was able to find a basically, and whenever there's something on the Senate that goes this way, you can always just guess. At this point, we can just guess the traitor Republicans who voted with the Democrats. So on this, it's they wait. So we have a 60-day MOU until we have our in the works with the deal with Iran. But the U.S. Senate has pushed a resolution to block military action in Iran. By the way, they can't. This is like largely symbolic, but they wanted to go on the record with it. The war powers measure is largely symbolic. It cleared Tuesday, but it doesn't go to the president to sign or veto. The White House, of course, quickly dismissed it as ineffective, but it passed with a bipartisan, well, got a bipartisan vote that that press is already running with. Oh, it's going to damage the president. Oh, it's so awful. But Republicans, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul of Kentucky sided with Democrats in support of the measure. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, dear friends with Katie Britt. So, which by the way is one of my favorite friendships. I think what a lot of people don't realize is way back when, before this became it, before we were rabid enemies with one another. People expected relationships across the aisle. People expected that that you would find people across the aisle that you have things in common with, even if you're not voting 100% of the time together. Even if you rarely vote together, you would still have friends across the aisle if you are an elected official, so that you can communicate and try for some kind of push pull. We now have a system where it's almost rabid. I mean, you don't have people who are saying, and especially as outwardly as, say, a Katie Britt and a Fetterman, where you're like, we're friends, and we're friends on a personal level. Fetterman, that relationship has been easier, I would believe, for Katie, because John Fetterman will actually make sense on some issues that is not a typical Democrat issue. I say this all the time: is we need to get back to where the Democrats, especially, they can call a spade, and they can say without fear of reprisal, okay, we've gone too far. We've gone too far with the LGBTQ insanity. We've gone too far in the education and taking our K-12 and making it, giving all the power to the teachers unions and the DC bureaucrats. One of my favorite things about this term of Trump is Linda McMahon and what they're doing, giving power back to the states. Ultimately, hopefully, what we see is the states then empower localities. There are times and ways in which I'm like, you've lost your mind when it comes to education. I get all the emails and I see all the stuff. I'm working on a piece now about the latest teachers union flip out. But for a long time ago, someone decided to sit down and write a list of issues, and education got ceded to Democrats. And we have had presidents and elected officials repeatedly who will say, "Oh, Republicans don't care about social services. Republicans don't care about education. Republicans don't care." No, it's not true. But they have hijacked the leftist agenda. The bureaucrats and the unions have hijacked education as an area. We on the left, we on the right will celebrate school choice, and we'll tell you why we celebrate school choice. Because one size fits all does not work in education. One size fits all doesn't work in darn near anything. And yet, Democrats are like, everybody should be locked into your neighborhood school you're zoned for, no matter how bad it fails. I like it when we see people who can say, you know what, this makes sense. You know what? School choice does make sense for kids who are in vulnerable communities. School choice does make sense for those who have a different learning need. whatever the circumstances that makes it unique to them or their district, that and it doesn't matter what they're how they're elected. All right, looking at the phone line, we got Kyle on the line. Let's see what we got. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, April Marie. Yeah, the thing about it with the Democrats, you made a great point. The only issue is this: they can't, like you said, call a spade a spade. And the reason why is the socialist group of their party, of their base, is growing more and more powerful. And now the problem is, if they do disagree, well, you're just like the Republicans. You're a Nazi. You're this. You're canceled. You're destroyed. Now, some people will say, oh, some voter bases do the same. Republicans do the same thing. No, they
No,
don't. Well,
no.
I don't see a lot of Yeah, I don't see us going out and threatening and doxing people's addresses and threatening to murder people and do all this other thing. Attacking them out in public. But it's funny. You're right. I think the only thing that I would probably say the Republicans need to do a better job of, and I think they are, is when they go, Republicans, you're against all of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and all these other things. No, we're not. What we want to make sure is the people who need this and the people who have paid into this, they're getting it. Or we don't have $8 to $10 billion of fraud in California alone or in Minnesota. I guarantee you, if they went in and said that and said, look, this is what the Democrats did. What we're trying to do is say, look, no, give it to the people who need it, not the people that are just too lazy or trying to con the system.
Yeah.
I think it would win a lot of people over.
And there are a lot of issues that have become, the third rail. You don't talk about it if you're a Republican. You don't talk about certain things, and the same goes for Democrats. They don't challenge their own. We do. We need to do a better job on the right of talking about. I there was a couple of years ago here, just right here in Alabama, they expanded coverage for pregnant women so that they could have care after longer if they needed it. There are things we need to say. Okay, this historically has been a Democrat issue, and it has suffered as such under Republican controlled legislature. But we need to make fixes here and there. And I'm hoping over time, again, this just polarizing political world that we live in, that we can find the things we agree on. And part of it is drowning out the loud voices. You drowned out the teachers union and you talk to actual teachers, you get very different priorities, even right here in Alabama.
Absolutely, and you're right. And I think the thing about it is, if they aren't going to push for school choice, all you're going to do is see a lot of these kids that are just going to start homeschooling.
Yep.
And then the other problem that you run into as well is what's really going to happen is you're going to have a lot of these states or these cities or these others say, you know what? We're not doing this. We're not going to be a part of this anymore. We'll break off and form our own system and then really start pushing the issue. But you're right. They need to. The only problem now is like you said, you've got unreasonable people on one side and you've got some people that are reasonable on the other side. But the problem the Republicans have, and you brought this up, so's Leland and so is everybody else, you have some of these rhinos that are Republicans that you can tell they really don't care. It's, hey, I did this. I'm in the club. I'm going to be like Marjorie Taylor Greene, get my so many years, get my pension. I'm out of here. I'm selling my house. And next thing I know, I'm living in the Caribbean.
Yep. Well, thanks for the call, Kyle. I appreciate it. We've got a couple callers on the line. If you guys want to hold tight, we'll be back in just a minute. Well, good afternoon. Special shout out to my friends over in Hoover listening. I'm getting your texts and seeing those messages. Thanks for listening. Also, friends in Montgomery, I appreciate you. April Marie here. If you are not following me on X, it's APRYLMARIE. You can find me there. And then, of course, on 1819 News, my day job, my full time job, I cover education primarily, cover education there. I also cover things going on within the central Alabama region. So you'll see those stories as well. Bill, been patiently waiting on the phone. Hey, Bill.
Hey, April. Yeah, I hope my, because last time with my phone battery low, but I wanted to kind of go back to the discussion you made about the protesters disobeying police and the punishment that should occur. Remember that discussion?
Yeah.
First of all, I see myself as an independent, and I like to think of, I'm looking at both sides. And I guess one of the things I would ask you is if you look at, say, the January 6th people from 2021.
Right, the riot.
Yeah. I mean, would you agree that there were some of those who were not peaceful?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the consequences for someone who assaults a law enforcement officer, no matter what your political affiliation is, should be the same. If you assault a law enforcement officer at a Republican event or somewhat conservative event, which is what January 6th was, or at a BLM, Antifa, whatever, anti-ICE, no kings, the punishment should be across the board standard.
My follow on that would be that I think in the minds of those on the left, I think the pardons that Mr. Trump gave to all those set a bad precedent. On the same way that, the light sentences you were talking about set a bad precedent for some of the things that have gone on there. So I think that in a fair discussion, people have got to look at both sides and realize that some of the concerns that people have, maybe on the left, if you will, or even toward the center, are that Mr. Trump has not always been consistent.
I would say on the pardons, one thing that we really have to make that people maybe don't realize is the way that those who were arrested and dealt with related to January 6th, especially those who were in D.C. prisons, they would end up in lockdown. They would end up with these outsized charges. They would end up in a prison with prison conditions that are deplorable, which, by the way, we have Alabama prisons that have the same problems. The way that the sentencing was done, where they were, outsized, outfit the crime. I think that's what ended up when you look at January 6th. And when I look back at January 6th, a lot of what I saw was an absolute frustration that judges were throwing the books and giving sentences. Should some of those crimes have been treated differently? I think that you have a point in terms of people who really assaulted law enforcement officers. We have it on video. We have injuries. This is not dramatized what they did, but we know what they did. There should have been let's look at what that prison sentence is. But on a whole, January 6th suspects and January 6th convictions were way outsized beyond what they would have normally gotten, especially those trespassers or just somebody in the building. Those were oversized, and so I think Trump came in and he was like, "Look, we're going to just clear the slate for everybody," and that's where he was.
Well, I can see that side, but I think that was going way overboard. And I think I could almost say, in general, with Mr. Trump, some of his policies are not maybe wrong, but they're poorly executed, and he goes a little too far. For example, on immigration, he talked about we're going to deport first those who have committed crimes,
right,
serious crimes. That was not the case.
Well,
he did find some.
I was going
did
to say
find some.
he did that, and then also, and I've had this conversation with friends who are questionable of the tactics. The other situation is they would go after one person, and they would find that one person with five other people who are also illegal here illegally. And their crimes may have been just some identity theft or overstaying or other immigration nonviolent crimes, and those people would be arrested with them. Well, what's the alternative? The alternative is we'll come back and try to find you later. So in situations, a lot of the arrest where you have people who hadn't done those violent crimes, they were found at a work site with other people who had done those crimes, in a vehicle with them, in a home with them. They were stopped for something else. We had some of those in Alabama. You were stopped for one reason, and then it turns out you were here illegally. Maybe didn't have a driver's license. Maybe were with somebody who didn't, or whatever it was. What do you do with the others in that situation? And you have no choice but to arrest them. It's not like they were, or even when they were coming in to check in, they'd say, you had a deportation order from 5-10 years ago. No, you're not a rapist or a murderer, but you have overstayed this. And now you're asking us to trust that you're going to come show up, even though you didn't show up last time. And so I have a lot more patience, tolerance to what has happened with ICE and how that has transpired. Versus, I wish we had gone more aggressively towards those who have committed crime. But I do understand that there are people who did not commit the violent crimes that have been caught in deportation. They haven't. They say they do and there's a lot of this. They'll go to one area to arrest 3 to 5 individuals that they're targeting. Well, they're there. Do they go after the other ones that are still there too? You go to a small town or a community. Of course you do.
One last thing I would ask you, and I know my time's almost out, but you're giving me some good stories, but I wish you all would do one thing on your website or somewhere, and that is post your sources. I consider myself reasonably well read, but I don't see your sources.
For what thing?
I don't. Huh?
For what? For
stories on ICE, for example. I mean, I might read the Times. I might read Fox. I might read NPR. I might read other things, but I don't always see where your sources are.
And what I would say to that is keep doing that, because not enough people do that, right? Like, a lot of people get siloed. So they're enraged by what CNN says. They're enraged by what they're saying on The View. They're enraged in whatever. So they discount that, right? I truly do think that you need to know, right? You need to have the argument, the pro and the con, and all, because it goes back to what I said earlier about hard news and opinion and bias. Bias is snuck into what usually has been considered in hard news. And so, here, obviously, Talk 99.5, we're giving commentary. And so I'll cite articles, and if someone calls, I will, during a commercial break, pull it up and maybe say it after. But I challenge you, do call and ask. Say, where did you get that, or what are you hearing from that? Because I think that's important for us to be able to say, these are what my sources are. My sources tend to be, by the way, and I do the same thing you do, from the left and the right, so that I can see what they're talking about. Earlier I called it rage watching. I'll rage watch some of these leftist commentators just so I can talk about, and this is their point of view, and quite frankly, how they get it wrong so frequently.
Right.
All right. Well, Bill, thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Some of my favorite callers are ones who don't agree with me on everything, because I think that's what makes us sharper, what makes us better. When it comes to immigration, that's one of those issues where it pulls at the heartstring. I think there's this idea out there that if you support deportations, across the board deportations, then you're more heartless in a way that maybe the left aren't. And that's not true. If I see an image or read a story of someone who's been here a certain amount of time, or they've done, of course, I'm like, that individual. But when you get into the okay, well, let's read 3 million stories and then figure out who it goes from there. What we're not seeing is we're not seeing the stories of the people who are trying to come in legally or who are trying to do it right and can't. And those stories to me are just as important. The individual who has served our nation, gone overseas, come back with a wife. That wife gets pregnant and she wants her mom to come over to the US and help her, a sister, a family member, whatever. That person has to do it legally, right? And so, should the family member, the mom who wants to come live with her near their daughter and grandchild, should that person be denied an opportunity and have, their story, which also tugs at my heart because someone crossed the border illegally or overstayed a visa or did something illegal? The answer is no. I can understand and sympathize with the fact that both of these families want their loved ones here. One's doing it the right way. And those are the stories we don't see. Those are the stories, when's the last time anybody has seen on the cable TV? I love the cable TV or the interwebs, the stories of those who are trying to come over legally, those that want to better their lives. The media doesn't tell those stories. They don't tell the stories of the person. And, I had a girlfriend in college who came here legally. She actually got into like a speeding ticket and ended up having to go back to Canada and then wait to come back. Had a friend in Orlando, his girlfriend, something happened and all of her paperwork wasn't in. She was here legally on a visa, and they said go, and she went. And then she's tried to come back. Does she have to get in the back of the line doing things the right way to the person who came across illegally? No, it's a bad system. Do I feel bad for the person who is in a country that doesn't have the opportunities? I do. But there's a reason we have laws, and there's a reason we don't look at the laws in a sympathetic way, but in a this is the rule of law, and we follow it when it comes to immigration. Because I feel like we don't see enough of this is where it hurts people. All right, taking a quick break. Oh my gosh, let's talk a little bit about the World Cup when we come back because there has been a decision on that as well in terms of immigration while we're on this subject. Back in just a minute. You're listening to Leland Live with April Marie. I'm supposed to be talking, but I'm watching AJ. You're enjoying this.
I am.
Oh. April Marie here for those who are just tuning in and have no idea who the woman you're listening to. I am a writer over at 1819 News, although I will give the disclaimer that I do not speak for 1819 News here today. One of my favorite things is that my boss there, Jeff Poor, and we actually disagree on a handful of topics. It entertains me to no end. It used to be I went on his program, which I go on once a week. I'd go on his program, and we every time I do the same thing before the segment. I'd say, "What are we talking about?" And if he didn't have something already in mind, he'd just pick a topic that he knew we disagreed on, and then he'd just argue with me on air for 15 minutes. That's what we would do. Which, by the way, I'm sure the listeners found that to be entertaining. But that's who I am, and what I do for my day job. The phone lines are open. 545-9950, 545-9950 if you want to call in. Let's see some of the topics we've talked about today. Over at the Senate, they would like the Iran war to end. Well, hello, turn on a news program and you'll see that Trump's doing what he can to end that now. There is a 60-day MOU. Maybe you should pick up a newspaper talking about where you get your sources from. We've got that. We have stiff penalties coming in for the Antifa domestic terrorist who attacked the ICE facility in Texas. 50 years for most of them, 100 for the organizer and the man who attempted to kill a law enforcement officer. So we've got those things coming in. Dave on a cell phone on the line. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Well, hey, April. Yeah, what is your email again? I was trying to write it down and drive. You know, it's not easy to do.
Oh, the best place to find me is on X, over at APRYLMARIE. And then the best way to find my email, and it's just easier for you to remember, if you go to 1819news.com and click any of the stories by my name, my email's right there at the bottom because it's a long one.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I called and I called late today. I forgot you were on. How many days are you going to be on this week?
I'm going to be on the rest of the week, and then I think Monday through Wednesday of next week. Is that right, AJ? I might be just Monday and Tuesday, but I think it's Monday through Wednesday next week.
Well, can we donate to send Leland on an extended vacation?
You know, when he comes back, he's actually going to be broadcasting from his trip, so you'll want to hear that.
Yeah, I've been on RV trips, so no, I'm not excited. Yeah, and this last back and go you just had about January the 6th and the illegal aliens. I'd love to chime in on that because you know there's so much stuff that that guy was absolutely wrong about, and you know all the people there were invited in by the Capitol Police to the building. And you know the Capitol Police were actually, we don't know how many of them were FBI, and they didn't count for all the people who had their own cell phone cameras going. That got out. There's so much stuff that they lied about. I mean that's just continuous. And if you're getting your news from Newsweek, Time Magazine, you know all that garbage, it's garbage. You're listening to the wrong kind, especially if you're listening to National Public BS. You know, we are being lied to so much, and then the illegal alien stuff. You know, there's a bill that was passed in '65. You can Google this and find it. It's the Hart-Sellers Act, and that's the first time ever that if you dropped a baby here, newborn baby, it became a citizen. The Congress is not going to change that. Why? Well, the American people want it changed. Why not? And there was a thing on YouTube last week. Tim Burchett, he's a Republican or
he's fantastic
representative from Tennessee. Yeah, they took it off because he said that the Congress is still allowing $400 million a week to the Al Qaeda going to Somalia. Why is that? You know, and he's saying, "Hell, I'm pleading with the Congress to balance the budget. Let's get clean with the public." And they won't do it.
No, they will not do it.
There's your reason. They're not going to change anything. They're loving this gravy train, you know. And that's just so. We could talk for hours on all the stuff that they've done. Is just horrible, egregious against the American people.
No.
Anyway, thanks for being there, April. Got your information.
Thank you, Dave. Follow, like I said, I'm also on Facebook, but I'll tell you, I've have invitations going back years on that one. I'm not good at Facebook. There, I'm a woman with lots of things going on. I got 3 kids. Somebody mentioned homeschooling earlier. I've been homeschooling one, and now I'm going into homeschooling all 3. And so, kind of in preparation for that, we're trying some things out this summer. Because when you homeschool, you don't necessarily have to go by a school calendar. And so, so we're continuing. I mean, even today, for the boys to get their devices, they both have work to do. We're still continuing to do reading every day. And I can't stress this enough, parents. I know that the people who listen to Talk 99.5 don't need to be told this. But if you've got your grandkids over for the weekend, or you're watching nieces and nephews or whatever, and you're not used to it, read to them or have them read 20 minutes a day. That is a year round. It will exponentially put them leaps and bounds above those who do not do it. Whatever it is you're reading. And I tell you what, so I'm currently, and I'll tell you, so my current book, I'm actually reading Terry Lathan. Those of you who are involved with Alabama politics will know the name Terry Lathan. Terry Lathan's husband, Jerry, wrote a book, and I'll tell you guys the name of it when we come back. But it's actually pretty cool. He wrote a book, and it's the Tales of the Apostles. It is, oh goodness, it is you will. I'm not gonna mess up the name. But it will. It's the Tales of the Apostles, but told from the biblical perspective, but in chronological order, as if they're telling a story, and you get to know them a little better. Well, I had been at night just playing different stories for the kids, and as I got into this book, I was like, hey, I can read this out loud. And it used to be I would read Magic Treehouse or whatever kids book, but they're loving this book. It's called You Will Be Peter by Jerry Lathan, Lathan. And I'm about 5-6 chapters in. You Will Be Peter is what it's called. And we've gotten, all of the major things in the Bible. I think I'm trying to think of where we are right now, but all the major New Testament stories, he goes through, but from the perspective of them being there, and we're really loving it. All right, when we get back, we'll get back to Alabama headlines, more of Trump's visit and speech from earlier today. You guys hold tight. April Marie here filling in for Leland.